Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
Hardy fiber cement siding is proven to withstand water, pests, and fire better than wood-based siding. And it looks better while doing it. Hardy siding has been chosen for 10 million homes and counting. See the proof at jameshardy.com.
You're listening to the Health Courage Collective podcast, episode 116, How to Fly an Unflyable Plane. Welcome to the Health Courage Collective podcast, the show for women who are too busy to slog through hours of generalized, inapplicable, and often contradictory health information, but too smart to ignore that a few minutes of focused attention now can prevent years of suffering in the future. I'm your host, Christina Hackett, a pharmacist who doesn't want you to live on prescriptions, a certified coach specifically trained to maximize your potential, and a compulsive learner obsessed with preventative, cutting-edge, holistic, and integrative medicine. I'm on a mission to increase your physical and mental resilience so you can fearlessly look forward to your next 40-plus limitless years. Your time is now. Let's go. Hi, and welcome to this week's podcast. I hope you are doing great and everything in your life is going just the way you want it to. How's your liver? Do you love it any more than before? Have you done anything kind for it in the past week? Do you remember what helps your liver thrive? Today, we're going to talk about how to fly an unflyable plane. Of course, this is a metaphor, but I do think you're totally cool if you're an actual pilot. I'm sure lots of people do too, but I've always thought pilots and airplanes are just the coolest, especially fighter planes. But even if you don't fly or fantasize about flying like I do, is there something in your life that seems overwhelming, excessively complex, or too big of a challenge to manage? Maybe it's figuring out an intelligent personal plan to age in a way that's enjoyable and results in you getting stronger and being capable of living more as you get older rather than less. You are in the right place for that. Or it could be something else in your life that's complicated to the point of feeling impossible. Really performing at a high level in some way. Maybe you're starting to feel like it's just not in the cards for you to be able to really excel or to rise to an elite level. I think you can blow your own mind with what you're capable of, and I hope this airplane story will help. This is a story I'm retelling you that Atul Gawande tells in Chapter 2 of his fantastic book, The Checklist Manifesto. On Wednesday, October 30th, 1935, the U.S. Army held a flight competition for airplane manufacturers vying to build the U.S. military's next long-range bomber. Everyone knew the competition was really just a formality because Boeing's plane it was entering in the competition, the Model 299, was way more advanced than the plane Douglas was entering. Boeing's plane was shiny, huge, could travel twice as far as any plane the Army had, and could carry 5 times as many bombs. The Army was already planning to order an astounding quantity, 65 planes from Boeing. They were just waiting for the so-called competition to end to put in their order. A crew of 5 officers, including the Army's best and most skilled test pilot, Major Ployer P. Hill, manned the Boeing Model 299 for the test flight for the competition. Are you into military aircraft at all? I like to casually look at them. There's a military airplane museum somewhat close to my house, and it's been one of my favorite places to take my boys for the last 17 years. I think they're fun and fascinating, probably due to my obsessive Top Gun watching when I was a teenager. I even got to sit in an F-18 once when the military recruiter people brought one to my high school. So cool. I still have perfect uncorrected eyesight, so I feel like it was kind of a miss on my part to never go for it, but I really don't want to shoot anyone from a plane or anywhere else, so that would be an obstacle in my becoming a fighter pilot. I do love learning about WASPs, though. Have you heard of them? The Women's Air Force Service Pilots. It was founded in 1943, and I think all of those ladies are just rock stars. I love seeing pictures of them because you know what daily life and expectations were like for women in the 40s, and there they are in their flight suits, blazing trails. Good for them. Okay, so back on topic. It's October 1935, and this aluminum alloy Boeing Model 299 test plane with its huge 103-foot wingspan and 4 engines under the wings taxis down the runway and takes off smoothly. It climbs to 300 feet, then stalls, turns on one wing, and crashes in a fire explosion, killing 2 of the 5 men inside. An investigation into the tragedy showed that nothing mechanical had gone wrong. The crash was due to pilot error. But the pilot who died was the Air Corps' chief of flight testing. The new plane was significantly more complex than all previous aircrafts the military had ever used, and one newspaper declared it to be too much airplane for one man to fly. The Army proclaimed Douglas's smaller and less impressive plane the contest winner, and Boeing almost went bankrupt. But the Model 299 had everything an Army pilot would want. It could carry more and travel further, and it looked really cool. Its potential was astounding. Imagine how much the military could do with it. They could dominate any situation. They could really push the envelope of possibility. Too bad it was unflyable. The case wasn't quite closed, though. The Army did purchase a few of these aircraft as test planes, and a few test pilots held on to hope that they could figure out how to fly the unflyable plane. The benefits were too big to give up on. What do you think the test pilots decided to do to try to make the Model 299 flyable? They didn't require prospective Model 299 pilots to undergo longer training. Nobody had more training than Major Ployer P. Hill. What they did was make a checklist the size of an index card with step-by-step checks for takeoff, flight, landing, and taxiing. It was all dumb stuff that the pilots already knew to do, like check that the brakes are released, the door is closed, and the elevator controls are unlocked. Failure to unlock the elevator control was what cost Major Ployer Hill his life. It seemed simplistic and below the education of these highly experienced pilots. They already knew what to do. They knew how to fly. They had been in really difficult situations before. It was an index card with dumb and simplistic stuff on it. And with that simple checklist, the plane was flown over 1.8 million miles without a single accident. Boeing almost went bankrupt when the Army didn't order the 65 of them they were planning to order in 1935, but the Army ultimately ordered 13,000 of those aircraft from Boeing. One Seattle newspaper reporter called it the Flying Fortress, and the nickname stuck. The plane got officially named the B-17 and was one of the most used and most successful military airplanes of all time. If you've ever seen one, they're really cool. One of my favorites. They're a huge reason why the U.S. was able to dominate the air in World War II. Well, the B-17 Flying Fortress in combination with the index card size checklist that allowed the unflyable plane to be flown. As you might guess, the book, The Checklist Manifesto, encourages you to use checklists. It's an awesome book and I highly recommend it. It does a great job of giving examples of where checklists have saved many thousands of lives and dollars and hours, and also does a better job than I'll be able to in 20 minutes of explaining the situations where checklists are the most valuable. He clearly lays out the evidence that checklists make your life better and save you from catastrophic errors. So, why aren't we all excited about using checklists all the time? Why don't parents have to nag their kids to stop making checklists and scroll on their phones instead for once? Sadly, lists aren't always super fun. Filling out pieces of paper, especially the same one over and over again, isn't sexy, and none of us have time to add one more thing to our already too long list of things to do every day. Taking the time to make a truly valuable checklist isn't high on our priority list because we have to be able to actually accomplish stuff. We're experts at what we do every day, whether that's our profession or our volunteer work or our family or household duties. We don't need to be told what to do or how to do it. We're not imbeciles, we're experts. So why all the hullabaloo about checklists? Some things we want to do are simply beyond our capacity. As much as I'd like to, I can't teleport myself to Iceland for an hour when the northern lights are dancing. Freeze time so I can finish what I'm doing, or make it so house pets don't have to poop. I'd seriously consider getting a bunny or hedgehog if I could. You know what would be cute is a meerkat. I don't know much about them, but I assume they'd be a terrible pet, but they're so cute. Hey, I wanted to briefly interrupt to ask if you're curious about female bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, the kind that's usually started around the time of perimenopause. What it is, what it does, how it works, what it's like. If so, you should check out my Udemy course called The Basics of Female Bioidentical Hormone Replacement Therapy. The course goes over the pros and cons of using hormone treatment, which hormones are usually included with BHRT, how they're used, the lab tests that are used, some tips for finding a prescriber in pharmacy to work with, and how to develop a rough estimate of how much BHRT will cost you. If you've been wondering whether bioidentical hormone replacement therapy is right for you, it's time to close that open loop, stop wondering, and move forward with confidence. Enroll in my course today. As a listener of the podcast, you can get a special discount for the very best price. It's a no-brainer. I would just tell you the coupon code, but Udemy makes me change it every month. So check the show notes or go to www.healthcouragecollective.com/Udemy to find the special podcast listener discount code that's only for awesome people like you. Okay, back to the episode. A lot of the universe is still beyond our understanding and control, but when control is in our reach, Gawande points out that there are only two reasons why we fail: ignorance and ineptitude. If we don't understand something well enough, we're ignorant. If we have the knowledge and fail to apply it correctly, we're inept. For nearly all of human history, our problems have come from ignorance. We literally didn't know what could be done. But over the last few decades, so much knowledge is available to most of us that ineptitude is more our struggle. Well, at least as much as ignorance. If you think of whatever your personal unflyable plane is your main problem ignorance or ineptitude? If it's ignorance, that's an easy fix. There are so many easy ways to learn what you need to know. If it's not, what we're looking for to be able to truly excel is aptitude, which is applying the knowledge we have consistently and correctly. Despite the vast knowledge of humankind, we're not as advanced as we could be because the volume and complexity of what we know has exceeded our ability to deliver the benefits correctly, safely, and reliably. Checklists shine in complicated situations. The more complex a task or project, the better suited it is for a checklist. Checklists are not instruction manuals. They can't help an ignorant person succeed, but they can help an expert not succumb to ineptitude. I think this is an important point to grasp. The checklist isn't there to teach you, it's there to save you. Failure in complicated situations like surgery or venture capital investing or parenting or health optimization or aeronautics usually comes despite great effort, not from lack of effort or lack of knowledge. Failures are common as well as demoralizing and potentially dangerous. When we drop the ball in some way, we usually feel like we're not good enough or smart enough, and the answer is to learn more or try harder. But like the Army pilots in the 30s knew, they couldn't just decide to put more and more crews of 5 men in B-17s and tell them to just try harder not to crash. But that's what we do to ourselves. We convince ourselves that our particular plane is unflyable, or that it's too much plane for this woman to handle. Anyone else who has succeeded is more special than we are in some way. No way. You're a wasp. Not sure whether you want to be called a wasp since they're super annoying insects, but I think they're some of the coolest ladies ever, and I think you're one of the coolest ladies ever, so it fits in my mind. You are totally capable of flying your personal unflyable plane. The secret to succeeding in complex situations is to do what the Army pilots did and accept your fallibilities, your humanness. Work with it instead of trying to pretend that it doesn't exist. As Gawande explains in the book, despite our tremendous knowledge and experience, when we look closely, we recognize the same balls being dropped over and over. even by those of great skill or determination. We can learn the patterns and see the costs. Our strategy for overcoming failure in complex situations is to accept our lapses in attention or memory. They're super common, especially when we're pressured or stressed or emotional or we get interrupted. A checklist is a strategy for overcoming failure. That's why you want one. I love how Dr. Gawande says in the book that checklists instill a kind of discipline of higher performance. I think that's the best. I want a discipline of higher performance. He also describes how checklists establish a higher standard of baseline performance and talks about how one hospital's 5-item surgery checklist reduced post-surgical complications from 11% to 0%, prevented 43 infections, 8 deaths, and saved $2 million in 1 year. He has tons of studies in different areas that are pretty shocking. These are simple checklists of no-brainer type items used by some of the most highly skilled professionals in the world, and the results were still stunning. Yet most people are still pretty checklist avoidant. If a surgical instrument or device or drug gave 1/10 of that level of effectiveness, it would be a blockbuster product in every operating room in the world. There's a good story in the book about 3 different world-class investors who each use checklists in their own individual ways to make millions or billions of dollars. They say that checklists help them to be as smart as possible every step of the way, ensuring that they're systematic in their investment decision-making. They're convinced that they're able to make the best possible decisions any human is able to, and they reliably way outperform the market because they've created such good checklists for themselves. Tons of people ask them for their advice about how to get better at investing because they're so successful. I think one of them's a hedge fund manager and one does venture capital investing and one buys companies, but maybe 2 of them run investment portfolios. I can't quite remember. But anyway, they're the best of the best in the world, and everyone is dying to know how they do it. And when they try to explain to them how they expertly crafted their checklists, and they always use their checklist, nobody cares at all. They want to know what specific investments they're making or some other specific detail. They try to explain that the process is key and the checklist is the thing that saves them from the $1 million mistakes that everyone else is making. But nobody cares. They don't want to hear it. When surgeons make sure to wash their hands and talk to everyone on the team, they improve their outcomes with no increase in skill. Same with pilots who follow their checklists. The financial guys say the same. We improve our outcomes with no increase in skill. It gives us an unexpected edge over others. Efficiency. You can avoid mistakes and move through more decisions methodically, which makes you way more money. The book makes the point we don't study routine failures in teaching, in law, in government programs, in the financial industry, or elsewhere. We don't look for the patterns of our recurrent mistakes or devise and refine potential solutions for them. But we could, and that is the ultimate point. We are all plagued by failures, by missed subtleties, overlooked knowledge, and outright errors. End quote. Checklists help save us from silly mistakes in complicated situations. If you're mulling over how you might be able to use a checklist to establish a baseline of higher performance or instill a discipline of high performance, which I hope you are, a great place to start is with what the most common mistakes or failures are, both your own and generally in your field. What are the routine failures in the area you're working on? I know something I see in the complex world of trying to age healthfully is that people put their money and attention and time into random scattered items that are kind of all over the place and done inconsistently instead of having a clear plan and starting with the highest impact item first. A checklist item, depending on how or when the checklist is being used, might be to ignore shiny objects like miracle supplements and gadgets and routines until your fundamentals are dialed in and consistent. You could research most common parenting fails, or pay attention to what triggers your depression or anxiety, or ask elderly people what they think held them back from living their dream life, and then find a way to respond when my child makes a bid for my attention, or don't exceed 90 grams of carbs, or write down one way I can reframe my fear of change to see it as an expansive discomfort every day on a usable checklist. It will need to evolve and improve over time. Your checklist probably won't start out great, but it can become great as you use it and iterate. The point is to force you to protect yourself from simple mistakes and oversights and to improve your outcomes without having to acquire any more skills. To accept and work with the fact that you're human and distractible, which is actually an amazing thing, that you can pivot and synthesize new information, adapt to change in a way that even AI can't, and still prevent simple errors and operate at a level of excellence that most people just can't. The ability to translate wisdom and data into a simple, usable system and then consistently working that system is magic. And you can be the magician. Abracadabra. The magic word is checklist. That reminds me of a stupid joke. Do you want to hear it? What do you call a dog who can do magic tricks? A labracadabrador. Oh boy, you're welcome. As miraculous as checklists can be, it takes time and work and some skill to be able to make a good checklist. After the first airline checklist in the 30s that allowed the Unflyable Plane to be flown over 1.8 million miles without a single accident, pilots started living by checklists. They're part of everything they do now. They have an official binder in every plane, and the checklists are also integrated into the plane's computer system so that they can be pulled up electronically. Boeing's Flight Operation Group is a checklist factory, issuing over 100 official checklists per year. The leader of that group says that bad checklists are vague and imprecise. They are too long. They are hard to use and they're impractical. Bad checklists are made by desk jockeys who don't actually get out and know what it feels like to have to use one in real life. Bad checklists try to spell out every step like the person using it is stupid. Bad checklists turn people's brains off. Good checklists turn people's brains on and allow them to be more of an autonomous expert. They're precise. Good checklists are efficient, short, to the point, and easy to use even in the most difficult situations. It probably shouldn't have more than 5 to 9 items or take longer than 60 to 90 seconds to get through. It shouldn't try to spell out everything. A checklist can't fly a plane or parent a teenager or come out of a health scare stronger than before. They simply remind us of what could easily be missed so that we can get the dumb stuff out of the way and let our brains rise above the little things and focus on the difficult issues that require engagement and creativity. A good checklist defines a clear pause point at which it should be used. This is important because it won't create any alakazam results if there isn't a clear time when it will be deployed. The book mentions a surgeon who had a little metal tent made that sat over the top of the scalpels in the surgical trays so that nobody could pick up a scalpel without being reminded to run the checklist. A good checklist should be simple, exact, and uncluttered. The single most important thing is that it needs to be tested in real life and revised several times. One interesting thing in several of the most successful professional checklist examples was that what was found to create the best or worst outcomes in complex and unpredictable situations is working as a team or not. So the surgical and I think the airplane checklists, and even in a different way the financial ones, have a checklist item for each member of the team to say their name and their job, and it makes a huge difference. Easy and fast. It doesn't force camaraderie, but it's a reminder enough to be effective in unlocking the power of teamwork and leveraging multiple people's brains and perspectives and unique skills. This might help you as you consider how a checklist might help you fly your personal unflyable plane. Some items that help you not overlook the stupid but critical stuff, and others to ensure that you talk to and coordinate with people that will be able to help you through unpredictabilities and who have different perspectives, insights, and responsibilities. One thing Dr. Gawande says in the book is, if we surgeons end up using the checklist anyway, what's the big deal if we do so with no joy in our souls? We're doing it. That's what matters, right? Not necessarily. Just ticking boxes is not the ultimate goal here. Embracing a culture of teamwork and discipline is, end quote. So don't plan to implement a checklist with no joy in your soul. Checklists are magic because they are a demonstration of your commitment to excellence. They can help you reduce risks and more consistently play at a higher level. Having the right knowledge is critical, but equally so is being able to apply that knowledge correctly. Expert judgment is essential, but only judgment enhanced by proper procedure will give you exceptional results. If you're considering making a checklist, I made you a free checklist making checklist. What? You can download it for free. I'll put a link in the show notes. You can also go to my website, healthcouragecollective.com. Go grab it to make sure that your checklist starts out with all but one of the right elements. Do you remember what they are? That's why they're in the checklist. But the number one element is to try it out in the real world and adjust and change as needed. You'll have to do that on your own. Head over to the show notes and grab that free checklist to get your checklist of checklist items and put magic to work on whatever feels like your unflyable plane. If you're wondering how I like to use checklists in my everyday life, I'd be happy to share the app I use to make sure I do the things that make it really hard for me to have a bad day every day. I use it as a way to demonstrate my commitment to excellence to myself. That's just if you find it helpful to see how someone else uses the checklist to attempt to close the gap between who they're actually being and who they're capable of being. Send me a message or email me at healthcouragecollective@gmail.com and I will show you how I use it. It might give you some ideas. As always, I'm here to connect with you and help you close that gap and live up to your potential and create a future that you're excited about. Don't forget to download your free checklist to get you started. Next week, we're going to talk about death. It's going to be fun. Until then, instill a discipline of higher performance and don't be normal. Thank you so much for tuning into the Health Courage Collective podcast. I am truly honored that you have paid me the enormous compliment of your time and attention. I would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.